Was the secret to getting all these Ivy League and Stanford offers?
It was because I picked and choose my extracurriculars very well. And as long as you find a distinction to jump off from for each college, you can give them a sense that you really care about going to that college.
Hello, xin chào. Thầy Tony đây. Chào mừng các bạn đã đến với Chuyện Du học, chuỗi podcast được sản xuất bởi chương trình College Campus của Everest Education. Đây là nơi chúng ta chia sẻ những câu chuyện truyền cảm hứng liên quan đến quá trình chuẩn bị hồ sơ du học Mỹ. Và tôi là Tony Ngô, chủ tịch và đồng sáng lập của Everest Education và là người dẫn dắt podcast hôm nay. Đây đã là mùa phát sóng thứ 3 của Chuyện Du học và Tony đang rất hào hứng chào đón những khách mời đặc biệt trong mùa này. Đó là ai và câu chuyện du học của họ có gì khiến bạn không thể bỏ lỡ? Hãy cùng Tony khám phá ngay bây giờ. Chuyện Du học podcast giúp bạn nhân đôi sự tự tin khi ứng tuyển đại học Mỹ. Hello, xin chào, thầy Tony đây. Các bạn có bao giờ nghĩ đến một thành tích không tưởng là được nhận vào 8 trường Ivy League và Stanford không? Hôm nay thầy Tony có cơ hội trò chuyện với bạn Tesvara, cựu học sinh Poly Prep Country Day School tốt nghiệp năm 2023, nhận được thư mời từ cả 8 trường Ivy League và Stanford và nhiều trường danh tiếng khác. Bạn sẽ nhập học vào Stanford mùa thu năm nay. Buổi trò chuyện hôm nay có 2 chủ đề chính. Một, quá trình khám phá và xác định đam mê của Tesvara. Và số 2, sự tự tin, quyết liệt trong chiến lược phát triển và chọn trường của bạn. Hãy theo dõi tập podcast này nhé.
Well, welcome everybody and thank you for joining today's session where we wanted to just share an awesome, inspiring story from an amazing student, Tesvara Jan. Tesvara, can I ask you to introduce yourself in maybe 30 seconds or a minute or so?
Yeah, of course. My name is Tesvara Jang. I graduated Poly Prep last year, and now I'm an incoming freshman at Stanford University. And I'm interested in majoring in applied math or econ, hopefully to go into finance.
Can I hear a little bit of biographical information about yourself?
I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I was raised in the city my whole life. I went to a public elementary school like 5 blocks away from my house. I rarely left that area. And then when I was in public school, I found that the topics there for me were not challenging enough. So I constantly tried to challenge the limits. I was reading books like 1 or 2 years above my age level. Because of that, my teachers were really interested in me. They really wanted to see where I could go from there, and they often found opportunities for me to take my education to the next level. And I think by a stroke of really good luck or something, they gave me this application to apply for a Catholic school in Times Square, where I was raised by the Christian Brothers, and that Catholic school connected me with Poly Prep and got me a scholarship to come to Poly Prep. From there, my life really changed. I come from a very low-income household. My dad is an Uber Eats delivery worker, and my mom is a cashier at a restaurant. So things were always a little difficult for my family. If I wanted something, I would have to work hard to get it myself. And I think that because of how hardworking I was from the very beginning, because I was truly interested in my studies and in improving myself every day, I was able to find people who wanted to support me. I would say I'm a very grateful person, and I'm a person that has been too lucky throughout my whole life.
That is literally the embodiment of the American dream, right? To have your parents work so hard and sacrifice, and then you be able to really take advantage of that. What grade did you start at Poly?
I started in 9th grade.
Okay. What stands out to you most about your experience at Poly?
What stood out to me most about Poly is the expansive amount of opportunities that were available to every student. When I came to the campus the first time, I was mind-blowing. I think I must have been drooling because there was so much opportunities available at Poly. Amongst its 25 acres, we have a golf course, we have baseball fields, we have a student theater, we have music rooms, there's instruments, people are playing instruments throughout the day because there are piano classes and violin classes. I picked Poly because I felt a sense of freedom that I could not find in the other schools. What really made Poly distinctive for me was that I had a lot of freedom to pick and choose between what I wanted to do. I never felt stuck in one thing because there were so many people to support me in all the other opportunities.
Okay, so how can you find your passion? So many of our students, a few of them, know very early on, like, hey, I'm really curious about real estate investing. I've actually had students say that to me. Most don't say that. Most say like, yeah, I kind of like math. I'm good at English, but I don't know what I'm passionate about. How do you find passion, and what advice would you give?
I think I found my passion by just trying a lot of things and then isolating the ones that I really liked the most. For example, when I was in 9th grade, I joined the wrestling team. I worked in a political organization, and that was a lot. Those two things were a lot of my time. I did wrestling, and that told me that it was not the right place for me. Why? Because I did not feel comfortable, and there was no competitors under 90 pounds for me to compete with. But you know, you live and learn every day. When you're looking for your passion, you kind of have to experience it yourself to know. Like, you can't just read a book on several different careers and be like, oh yeah, I like this one, because that's not going to be how it is in the real world. I thought I would like working for a public campaign. I thought it was very cool to be like standing up there, speaking in front of people all the time, and you know, broadcasting your views to the public and trying to get support for them. You know, it sounds very like a romantic kind of thing to be doing. It sounds really important and powerful. But when I was working in a public campaign, I found that a majority of the people working in a campaign don't actually have any power or any say in anything. They're just supporting the one person that they're campaigning for. And I realized, you know, it's not right for me. And business is more right for me. After that experience, I did not apply for any other political campaign jobs in the future. And now I have already isolated myself a little more towards my passion. So just experiences in general help you find your passion. I think that if I had not done wrestling back then, I would not have known that it might not be the right sport for me. Now I play golf and I play tennis. I went from 5 sports to just 2, but I know that those are the right things for me because I can confidently say that I have tried other things. And I think that's really important for you guys to pick and choose from your experiences. And that's why you need to have many of them. That way you can make the most confident decision.
5 sports. That is pretty extreme. I love it, right? So, but the general thing is, I think as a principle for everybody, right? Like use that 9th grade year to explore as much as possible, right? Mm-hmm. If you have a curiosity, it doesn't matter. But over time, in order to stand out, you do have to go from a generalist to a specialist in certain things. Tell us about that journey through high school. What did you choose? What to go deep in, and why?
I think when you first start out in 9th grade, you're at a blank slate. So you kind of have to fill up your time with different things that you think you might enjoy. I saw the wrestlers in the gym where they wrestled in was very nice. So I was like, let me give this a try. So that ended up taking up 2 hours of my day. And then I wanted to try cello as well. I wanted to work for a political organization. I was a direct voter contact. So that means that a few hours a day, I would have to take a trail and knock on the doors to advocate for this party that I was working for. And that also took like multiple hours of my day. But over time, you will come across new opportunities. Like when I was doing all those things, perhaps I saw a different opportunity, which is this real estate firm 2 blocks from my house. I really liked the idea of investing in property. I was watching some like YouTube videos about how there's a snowball effect where you can place a 20% down payment on one house and then you can pay for it using rental income, right? And I was like 13 years old and I was like, I really want to be doing this. So I need to really acquainted with the real estate situation in our country. So I went to the real estate firm with a 5-page resume as a 9th grader, and I told them that I really wanted to work for them, even if it was for free. And they ultimately took me on because, I don't know, they're very nice.
Before you move on from that experience, I just have to interject because I think that's such a great snapshot of like some of the best practices of what we try to instill in our students as well. And sometimes takes a big mindset shift, right? So Stanford in particular, right? So Don and I are Stanford interviewers, right? And they teach you that you have to look for intellectual curiosity as one of the 2 key things. The other one is the depth of your commitment. When you say you're interested in something, how committed are you? But the intellectual curiosity, what you just did was a great example of that, right? People think that it just means, oh, I got good grades in school. And it's so far beyond that, right? So your example there was you learned a little bit about real estate and got so curious about it that you then, as a ninth grader, made a resume, went out and just dropped your resume, cold called them, approached them to basically beg for an internship for free, just so you could have the experience so that you could cultivate your curiosity about a burning question. That is a phenomenal, easy thing to do. All it takes is to put yourself out there, right? And it's generally very hard for high school students to go do a resume drop in an official process. But I bet for you to do this, you have to go knock on their door, call them and say, hey, I'm Tesvara, I'm down the street and I really want to work for you. And it's that conviction that ultimately is what wins the day. And by the way, that's not just what will help you in that one that skill will help you in everything you do in life going forward. So thank you for sharing that one little snippet there, because I think it's incredible insight.
Yeah, I really agree with you, Tony. I think if you were going to pick one lesson to learn from this as a young student right now, is to be shameless, to go ask for all the opportunities that you want and not worry about what other people will think of you. Like when I was in ninth grade, there are opportunities around you. You just need to open up to them and you need to ask for them because they're everywhere. You just have to ask. And I think if you give yourself freedom to go try new things, like holistically, you will end up sticking with the ones that you really like. And that's how you really decide on your passion. And in the beginning, you can do some research, you can speak to some people that are similar to you to try to find a good place to start, because not everyone knows where to start. It's important to, hang out with some older kids, some people more experienced than you that are also a little similar to you and, get some of their insight on what are some good steps you can do to explore new things.
So this is where I think being in a great environment like PolyPrep, where you have these resources and people who have done it, been there, done that, is phenomenal. But you've got to be proactive to go build relationships with them, ask them for coffee to share their advice and tips and all that. Second, for me, is what you described is exactly what we do with our students in College Compass in the younger years. So 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th grade, like there's a structure in place, but the method to the madness is to allow you to try as much as possible. There's a little bit of theory, like you got to do a little bit of reading to find out about these industries, different roles, what the job descriptions might look like. But it doesn't really count until you try it yourself, right? You can talk to some of these people who have done that job, but then we really want you to try to do something. Maybe it's find an internship, maybe it's try to do a research project, maybe it's go do the robotics club, whatever it is. You have to do, then reflect. So it's not just I'm good at math, so therefore I should be engineer, right? It's very helpful to do and reflect, do and reflect. So was the secret to getting all these Ivy League and Stanford offers that you did every extracurricular?
It was not that I did every extracurricular. It was because I picked and choose my extracurriculars very well. When I was in high school, my first 2 years of high school, I spent a lot of time doing things that did not last. I think that when you're younger and you're several years away from applying to colleges, you should take the freedom to explore many different things. That way that when the time comes to build your extracurriculars, to ultimately know which ones that you will use in your application, you will have a lot to pick from and you have a lot of experience to be able to pick the extracurriculars that really resonate with you.
Incredibly useful there. I have so many more questions here for you. Many of our students love the famous schools, love the Ivy Leagues in reputation, but they don't know anything about each of the schools there. Can you say a little bit about each of the schools? And then at the end of that, we'll talk about why Stanford in particular.
When I was doing my application, every week that I worked on a different college, I found it my goal to really observe everything about that college, to visit if I could, to watch all the videos online if I could, to explore the website and sort of get a sense of what each college focused on. And I found that while they're all Ivy League schools, most of them have very different ideals that make them distinct from the others. As a result, I would find some of these schools to be a better fit for me than the others. What I found in my research was, as most can already know about Brown University, but they're a much more artsy school. They have a fantastic art program. Their campus is very open, free, and green and sustainable. I found that they were very interested in the artistic and creative side of students, and all their courses are centered around opening the creative side of every student. One thing that makes Brown more distinct from the other schools is they have like what they call an open curriculum, where every student sort of designs their own major, and they don't really have to declare a major until like second or third year, but it's pretty late. And as a result, I didn't think that was the best fit for Brown. I'm a more practical person, not so creative. And even if I was, I'm not calling upon my creativity every day. So I didn't put as much focus into Brown University. But what I did see about the other schools, like Princeton, for example, has a big focus on service. You can see that every freshman at Princeton starts off with a big service project. And that is at the core of their education, to provide a service back to the community. So what made my Princeton application very successful was that I focused a lot on giving to my community. The two essays that I had to write for Princeton, one of them was about the period product initiative I did at Poly, where I introduced new period products in all of the new bathrooms that were not only sustainable, but fits women of all different sizes and were for all different flow types as well. For UPenn, they are more career oriented. That's why when you apply to UPenn, you have to pick a college. You can pick between, I think, their medical school, their business school, and the College of Arts and Sciences. So because I knew that I was applying to Wharton, the business school, and I knew that people who were interested in business were going to be reading my application, I didn't really talk about service because that wasn't going to help me. Instead, I talked about my small business where I sold custom shoes, and I spent a lot of time talking about how I budgeted expenses for that and what I did with the money afterwards to help my family. And I thought that they were really interested in that, and that really carried my application through.
What would you say about Dartmouth and Cornell?
Dartmouth, it has no graduate program, and I wouldn't say it's pre-professional. I wouldn't say it's extra creative. I think Dartmouth was just, I don't know, I found it very bland.
Before you jump on there, in defense of Dartmouth a little bit, right? I don't think bland is a fair assessment of school. I have many friends who have gone to Dartmouth and love the school. Of all the Ivy League schools, the people who most consistently say, I loved going there, I would say is Dartmouth #1, then probably Yale #2, and then Brown maybe #3 in terms of in terms of the day-to-day life experience there. So it is very small. It doesn't have the graduate programs, as you mentioned. It has a very rural campus that is very tight-knit though. So I think people get to know each other very, very well there and love it. But you have to like that small, tight-knit community.
Yeah. I think personally, I was a little biased when I spoke about Dartmouth.
Well, but this is where it goes back to fit. I don't imagine someone as energetic and who wants to try so many different things. I don't imagine that type of person enjoying Dartmouth as much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I see you thriving in a bigger environment. There. Okay, Columbia.
For Columbia, I would talk about how I was going to use the city. I was talking about how from New York, so I already know everything here and I would never want to leave here. And I think that students at Columbia and the people that are looking for at Columbia are people who would do well being resourceful, being able to use all different aspects of the city in their education. Because the big thing about Columbia is that they like to brag that, oh, we don't have a campus. We don't need one because we have New York City. And if you could play towards that and how you're going to use New York City to your advantage, that would be really helpful. For Yale has they want to see you engaging in linguistics and business and the arts and athletics. And they want you to do it all very cohesively and create your own path from a multitude of different disciplines. So I talked about how I was going to use linguistics and econ to change the world. And I actually applied for linguistics as one of my majors for Yale. And I thought that was pretty successful because they want people who are more on the quirky side. Whereas I probably would not have done that for applying to UPenn. It would not have been helpful. Cornell, I saw was very similar to UPenn. also very pre-professional. They have a lot of different schools that you have to apply for individually. Personally, I applied for the Johnson School of Business to get like a bachelor's in business. So my application was similar to UPenn, very business oriented, talked about my internship, talked about my small business. Harvard, honestly, because everyone wanted me to apply to Harvard, I did not want to apply to Harvard. But I did anyways, and I don't think I did anything incredibly special applying to Harvard. I just saw it as like the best place to be doing practically everything. So I wrote as much as I could about like the stuff that I was really passionate about, and I didn't really try to like use any loopholes or anything.
Well, what really jumps out to me is how strategic you were in adapting your communications, your portfolio for each school's what they're looking for as well, right? And I think that's so important to stand out. I don't know your financial aid situation. I'm assuming you needed scholarships as well to get accepted to these schools and have financial aid. I mean, you have to really stand out beyond the grades, beyond even the extracurriculars, beyond the test scores, right? The essays have to convey why you are such a good fit with each of these schools. And hopefully for our audience, they can see just how customized that was there. All right, the big one. Why Stanford?
After I got into my universities, I isolated like the top 5 universities that gave me the most financial aid and that were most suitable for me. And for me, that was Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, and UPenn, because I got into the business school over there. And for each college, I tried to look at them from an unbiased point of view. Like there was a lot of family members that wanted me to go to Harvard. Mr. Graham from Poly wanted me to go to Stanford. I didn't want to let all these opinions get to me because personally, I did not yet have a preference. I only knew them for the name and I didn't get the chance to visit most of these colleges as well. So I wanted to give them all a chance. And I told myself I was gonna be as calm as possible and not be bogged down by the opinions of others. And I was gonna go to all of these colleges and visit them for like a day or two and really get the feel of what they all want in their students before I make a choice. Although I kept like Yale and Princeton and UPenn up there and I visited them all as well, I knew that at the end I probably would have to pick between Harvard and Stanford because the name of those two schools were at the top of the pack, and also because I had the most like family and school support for those two schools. So I really knew that I was gonna like pick between one of those two. And when I visited, I found that I liked Stanford a whole lot more for like a few reasons. When I first walked into Stanford, I really liked the freedom that I felt on campus. Like Stanford is really expansive. It's exactly why I really liked Poly Prep. At Stanford, there was so much space. If I wanted to get to the engineering building, I would have to walk a lot, and I loved that. Like I love to be outside. I love to reflect and walk and really think about my surroundings. And when I was at Stanford, like for the 3 days of admit weekend, I felt that freedom and I was able to see the sky. I thought there was less pollution as well. I really liked like having all these resources spread out around me for me to explore. Like I want to be able to walk and take a different path every day. And I did not really see that at Harvard. I saw it was very similar to New York City, where I'm from, but it just felt really familiar. I didn't feel like I was going away anywhere. And I thought if I was going to try something new, Stanford would be the best place because, you know, it's like right next to Silicon Valley. There's so many opportunities here, so much interest in venture capitalism, in business. And both Harvard and Stanford had a good business program. They had good math, and Stanford actually has better computer science. If I was even interested in that in the future, I just went with my gut because I thought that I felt the happiest here. And I didn't think it would make a difference in the long term. So I thought, you know, I could not go wrong. And that's why I picked it.
Tesvara, this was fantastic. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Let's definitely keep in touch. I would love to hear about your Stanford and hopefully one day your Harvard MBA journey. Happy to be helpful there. Thank you for sharing your time and wisdom with our community here at Everest. Okay.
I really enjoyed talking to you guys and sharing my story. I hope it was helpful. I tried to give it to you as real as possible.
Cảm ơn bạn đã theo dõi Chuyện Du học Podcast và hy vọng bạn đã tự tin hơn gấp đôi khi nhìn vào checklist chuẩn bị hồ sơ. Nếu bạn vẫn còn nhiều băn khoăn hoặc muốn biết thêm chi tiết về các chương trình định hướng du học của College Campus, hãy đặt lịch tư vấn với các cố vấn du học của chúng tôi. Và đừng quên like và share với bạn bè podcast này. Hẹn gặp lại bạn trong tập podcast tiếp theo của Chuyện Du học. Chào tạm biệt.